How can you tell if an OS boot problem is hardware or software? Imagine turning on your computer and instead of the usual startup, you see strange beeps or error messages. It can be confusing to figure out if the problem is with the hardware or the software. Let's walk through how to tell the difference. When your computer starts, it first runs a process called the boot process. This begins with the firmware, which can be called BIOS or UEFI. Its job is to check if all the hardware components like memory, disk drives, and input-output devices are working properly. During this check, called the power on self-test or post, if there's a hardware problem, the system usually signals it with beep codes or on-screen messages. For example, a series of beeps might mean faulty RAM or a motherboard issue. If post finishes without errors, the firmware then looks for a boot device, like a hard drive or USB stick, and tries to load the bootloader. If the bootloader or the operating system files are corrupted or missing, the system might get stuck here or show error messages like operating system not found. So, how do you tell if it's hardware or software? First, listen for beep codes or look for error messages during post. If you hear beeps or see messages about hardware issues, it's likely a hardware problem. Next, check the BIOS or UEFI settings. If the hardware is detected correctly and the boot order is right, hardware is probably okay. If the boot device is missing or misconfigured, it could be a setup issue. Another way is to try booting from external media like a USB drive or DVD with a known good operating system. If the system boots from there, the hardware is probably fine, and the problem is with the installed operating system or bootloader. Observe how the system behaves. If it crashes or freezes during post, hardware might be at fault. But if it passes post and then shows errors like no boot device found, it points more to software issues. You can also run built-in diagnostics available in BIOS or UEFI or use bootable diagnostic tools. These tests can check hardware health and confirm if components like memory, disk drives, or the motherboard are working properly. Different operating systems use different bootloaders, like Windows with the Windows Boot Manager or Linux with Grub. Problems with these can cause boot failures, but they usually happen after hardware has been initialized successfully. To sum up, hardware problems usually show up during post with error signals or failure to initialize components. Software issues tend to occur after post, often related to corrupted files or misconfigured settings. Using external boot media and diagnostic tools helps pinpoint the root cause. Understanding these signs makes troubleshooting much easier and helps you get your system back up and running smoothly.